Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Countdown to 3-minute mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Countdown to 1-minute mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Countdown to 30-second mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Count down to 10-second mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Welcome to Bobby Likis Car Clinic. If you have a car question for Bobby, call now at 1-800-264-5454, toll-free from anywhere in America. And now, here's your host, Bobby Likis.
And thank you, Marty White. Good morning, folks. Welcome to this edition of Bobby Likis Car Clinic. Kind of an easy day. I was saying to Fabio, our producer, before the beginning of the program here, that I'm a little sleepy this morning. I don't know why. I mean, I went to bed at the same time, got up at the same time, and had my cup of coffee and what have you. And he says the weather. And I think you have a point there. Speaking of the weather, I want to reach out to all of our friends in Kearney, Nebraska. A whale of a storm there, water like I think they've never seen before. And next week, by the way, and Fabio, if you got my recent email, we do emails, inter-office. Such a storm, and next week is cruise night for them. So a lot of hotels are closed in Kearney, and so our hearts go out because hey, we've been there. We know what along the Gulf Coast. We know what storms are. And speaking of storms, New Orleans is being threatened, with current bad weather. Bobby Likis Car Clinic is brought to you in part today by Clarius, the world's largest producer of automotive AGM batteries, which are built to power start-stop technology, backup cameras, entertainment systems, and all the other electrical demands on vehicles today. You can learn more at autobatteries.com. Your calls when I come back. Your vehicle a little sluggish? Try Berryman's B12 Chem Tool. Using HEST or high-energy solvent technology, Berryman B12 Chem Tool dissolves gum, varnish, and carbon deposits in the fuel system to help restore lost power and peak performance. But don't take our word for it. According to Terry Kay, I use Berryman B12 Chem Tool in my parents' 2000 Chevy Impala with 140,000 miles. We noticed a marked improvement almost immediately. Learn more about Berryman B12 Chem Tool and other great products at berrymanproducts.com. All batteries are not created equally. Don't trust just any battery for your vehicle. An Optima battery has up to 3 times the life of a traditional flooded battery. Optima batteries are constructed with 99.99% pure lead, meaning additional power, quicker recharging, and corrosion resistance. Additionally, each Optima AGM battery is maintenance-free and completely sealed, preventing acid spills. Optima batteries, the ultimate power source. Learn more at optimabatteries.com. Talking tunes. No, not the ones on your radio, the ones that allow you to reprogram your vehicle's factory computer without even popping the hood. The result is more power, more torque, and a better overall driving experience. We recently sat down with Jim McGinn, Vice President of Marketing for PowerTech. Jim explained that performance programmers aren't just for race cars.
While Superchips Flash Pack is known for delivering impressive horsepower and torque gains on gas, diesel trucks, SUVs, and Jeep, one of the number one selling features of the product is added and increased fuel economy, whether you're towing, driving around town, or taking things off-road. The Superchips tow tune allows you to eliminate excessive downshifting, run in a higher gear, downshift less, lower your RPMs, and as a result, save fuel. The Scape has changed for performance programming, and we're not just for race cars anymore. We add vehicle performance and efficiency for trucks, SUVs, and Jeeps.
You can learn all about the new Dash Pack Plus and other great performance programmers at superchips.com. That's superchips.com.
You're listening to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
P. Outfitters, I'm Tina. How can I help you?
I'd like to place an order.
Great. Which item?
The cotton roll neck sweater, large.
Okay. Periwinkle loaded or caramel?
The caramel, please.
The what?
I'd like it in caramel.
Oh, the caramel?
Yeah, that's what I said, Tina.
Actually, you said caramel when it's pronounced caramel.
Can't we just call it yellow?
No.
Everyone knows the best part of a Milky Way. They just don't know how to say it. After all, it's our caramel.
It's caramel.
Ugh, that makes a Milky Way great.
You start my morning, you stir in my soul, you warm my heart, make me feel whole. Your aroma calls me, starts my morning, happy morning. Your name is Folgers Mountain Grow. Now you're here, your aroma helps me wake, and the day is mine to take. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
And now back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic and your host, Bobby Likis.
Okay, let's get started with this hour of Bobby Likis Car Clinic. Talking with Fabio, our producer, before or during the break there, and I was talking about, do you know what UBIGI, what that stands for? Of course, the answer is no, because it's information that I found in my trade news releases that come to me. And UBIGI is owned by Transitel, which is a UK company, or I say UK, it's in Europe actually, not just the UK, but they provide services for your car, SIM card, and so it's pretty easy that you just use a SIM card and put it in your vehicle, and you can connect to the internet. And that enables navigation and connectivity features of your vehicle's infotainment system. It's really kind of cool. Transforms your driving experience as you maximize your vehicle's capabilities, because you stay connected, informed, and entertained, and all those things. And so, as we go forward with technology, which we are and we will. And all the manufacturers. I mean, how many folks? And I ask the same question because I have to ask it of myself. How many of you really believed that we would see self-driving automobiles, and how soon? I mean, we may even those that of us who believe in technology would say, yeah, I do believe that. Sure, we know because we see tests being performed by companies, Google, and of course Tesla. Tesla does a lot more than what we know that he does. He being Elon Musk. When you think of Tesla, I mean, isn't that something that Mary Barra is the CEO of General Motors? But a lot of people don't know who she is. Mark Roush is also one of the executives at GM. We've interviewed him. He's a car guy, by the way, really neat guy. Years ago, and I don't remember how long, but let's just say 5 or 6 years ago, you can look for this interview online. Mark Roush was riding with another executive in, I think, a Volt at the time, and Fabio, they were driving from Detroit to Ohio, and they had a new plant they were opening, and they spent, they being General Motors, $500 million, $500 million on an assembly plant, an expansion, and what have you, to build those cars there. And so he was driving down as part of the promotions, and so he called us from the highway. And it was really kind of neat to be able to talk with someone from that level of management that was a down-to-earth individual. And I said, well, what's it like? He said, fine, and we were kind of chatting there, and I try to make people feel relaxed. Well, he was making me feel relaxed, and next thing you know, I said, hey, by the way, how fast are you running? He said, I run 75. He said, I'm running the speed limit. He had to look at the speed limit, but he was running 75 or 80. And the point here is that this UBIGI, and you can Google it, folks, and see. It's an external antenna that's mounted on your vehicle's roof, like we all see, we all have on our cars for sat radio, et cetera, et cetera. And it connects to a local mobile network provider that gives you data connection while you're on the move. Now, of course, GM's advertised movable hotspots, that's what your car is, a hotspot. But you can actually have up to 8 connections to your vehicle. And so it's kind of neat. I was first I was thinking, well, okay, let's say that we're going along the highway, and of course, if you have your phone on connect automatically, which I do, and you get into a restaurant or a Starbucks or one of those, it automatically connects, and if there's no password. But it'd be neat to pull up to somebody and you follow them along for a long way. You're using their internet provider service. And I remember, and folks, it hasn't been that long ago that, well, where's really, well, I guess it has been that long ago, where's the mobile telephone business going? I mean, really? Because who's got a phone? Tom, Dick, and Harry has a phone. We've got a phone. John's got a phone. So that system is going to be, for all intents and purposes, saturated, I thought. And it just shows you the limits of our minds, because if you go to Europe, if you see a 13, 14-year-old young person, they're talking on a cell phone and smoking. I mean, that's and in fact, the cigarette manufacturers actually made a statement, and I don't know where I got this information, so don't quote me. Was that they could care less if the U.S. banned smoking, because they have such a huge business in Europe, because it's universal, and I guess that it's culture. And speaking of that, that's where now I'm going to round back to what my original point was. And folks, I invite you to call 888 Car Clinic, and I'll take your call and put you in the queue. 888-227-2546. So in Europe, they are so far, in many ways, ahead of us. Just like this UBIGI, Transatel, 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 Transatel. That's a company, and it's owned by the fifth largest, mobile company. And I forget the name. That was on another sheet, and I only had this one sheet that I printed, and I wanted to share that with you. But it's amazing how far ahead of us. I mean, we are the most powerful nation in the world. Technology galore and technology personified, and yet there are products on the street in cars right now in Europe that are several years away from actually making the streets in our town. I mean, in our towns, in our cities. So it's just, I find it very interesting when we look at cars, and a lot of times, for me, my weekly work status is repair and service of automobiles. And so when you're kind of like a triage, when you're in the ER, and you see all these people coming in on stretchers and or limping and hacking and coughing and in one form of illness or another, or tragedies or what have you. I mean, we see a lot of that. We see, and that's when I talk about, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but maybe not so subtly, is that the people don't bring their cars to our shop. Cars bring their people to our shop. And a lot of times, the tow truck brings the car that brings the person to the shop. So the bottom line is, you can be proactive. And recently, in fact, it was last week. That was last week. WEAR TV3 is the Gulf Coast ABC affiliate. So I get a phone call, and I've filmed several little segments for them, depending on the day and the weather and those sorts of things. And so July the 2nd, I did a piece for them relative to the highway traffic for July 4th and those things. And so a nice young lady came out, Jennifer, and she set up her camera, and she said, "I'd like for you to give us some road tips." And so we just had a conversation, and she and I did, and she filmed it, and they went and edited it. And I think I've got 3.5 seconds. She was here 15 minutes, and I think we talked a good, she probably filmed a 6 minutes or 7 minutes conversation. And they used a lot of that because they wrote an article, and then she actually conveyed and gave a report using my words, and she did a really great job, I thought. And then they put me on camera, and one of the things that they said, get this, folks, now, when I first came on camera, they said, well, here's Bobby Likis, give you some tips. And I was talking about car repair, and I said, I had my right hand and left hand, I said, car repair, root canal. Car repair, root canal. Because that's what a lot of you think. You think about car repair and root canal, and sure enough, it doesn't have to be. And so that's where the moral of the story is, if there ever is a moral to automotive repair, the story is proactive. And I'm so proactive in my car. Ask me how proactive. Okay, thank you. I'll tell you. I'm so proactive in my car, I look for things wrong with my car because I know that as the car ages, see, it's not the miles. I'm not concerned about the miles on my car. Well, a little bit with regard to the carbon buildup in the direct injection engine, which there's no way to stop. That's another conversation there. But I'm concerned about the age because over age, you have suspension parts that rubber wears out, isolators, engines, and what have you. So anyway, your calls when I come back. I do have a gentleman, G. Brown, is a Watch Bobby Live listener and viewer, has a question about his new Honda Accord and what oil to use when I come back. Insurance 101, courtesy of Grundy Insurance. Grundy's agreed value insurance does not deduct for vehicle age or expected wear and tear when evaluating a loss. They know there's a greater likelihood that your collector vehicle's value will increase over time. Grundy also understands the cost to repair or replace your collector car can change. Their collector car policies feature a built-in inflation guard, which in recent years has automatically increased the insured value of one's vehicle by 4%. Learn more at the Insurance 101 section at Grundy.com.
These are the sounds of someone taking their eyes off the road. Texting while driving is more than distracting. It's dangerous. Do us all a favor. When you're on the road, stay off the phone. A message from CTIA, America's Wireless Companies, and the National Safety Council.
This car repair spotlight brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. This week, a 2011 Smart car came into the shop with 135,000 miles and grinding noises during stopping. Bad brakes? Nope. A road test determined this little Smart car had a bad right front wheel bearing. For such a small car, the noise sounded like an F-250. Johnny Bars, Master ASE certified technician, disassembled both hubs, only to find the bad bearing had also damaged the front brake pad, wearing unevenly. Time for, you guessed it, a call to our local O'Reilly Auto Parts professional for new parts. We were worried they might not have Smart car parts, but our O'Reilly Auto Parts professional told us not to worry. If the parts weren't in stock, their team would locate them and deliver them soon as possible. What a great relief that was. The very next day, repair done, vehicle quiet, and Smart car owner safely back on the road. Another great reason why our first call for parts is O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts, better prices every day.
You're listening to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
The airlines like to have sales. Summer getaway sales, holiday sales, winter sales. Truth is, at any moment, some airline somewhere is on sale with low fares to great destinations. Travelocity knows exactly what's going on, who's on sale, to where, and when, at over 700 airlines worldwide. We even have this nifty feature that lets you look at a calendar so that you can see exactly the days the great fares are available. Travelocity.com. Go virtually anywhere. AOL keyword, travel.
Hun, guess my temperature.
It's 2 a.m. Go to sleep.
Come on, one guess.
I'm 98.
Higher.
Higher at 99.
You're getting warmer. Wait, I'm getting warmer.
Cold symptoms keeping you from getting a good night's sleep? Get NyQuil, the nighttime sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever so you can sleep better to feel better medicine. Use as directed.
One more guess.
100?
Yes. Tell her what she's won, Bob.
And now back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic and your host, Bobby Likis.
And welcome back to this segment of Bobby Likis Car Clinic, brought to you in part actually by K-Seal. And you've heard me promote K-Seal. I use K-Seal. What is K-Seal? For those of you who have just tuned in or are not familiar with Bobby Likis Car Clinic, because if you were, you'd be familiar with K-Seal. It's a one-step pour-in solution that's designed to stop coolant leaks and help prevent future leaks. And you can find K-Seal at auto parts stores nationwide, like Advanced Auto Parts, for instance. Don't just seal it, K-Seal it. And this is especially important for those of you who may have an older car that it's paid for. It may not look the best in the world, but and it may be the upholstery needs a little work, but it still gets you from point A to point B. And all of a sudden, something happens that the cooling system starts to leak, and of course it's an old car, so you say, well, I'll get it to the shop sooner or later, and next thing you know, it's overheated and it's damaged an engine. So that automatically qualifies the car for the junkyard, because if the car is worth, let's just say it's worth $2,000, you'd be hard pressed to put $4,000 in a new engine, or even buy a used one, because once you start to bring up an old car, when I say bring up, to restore an old car, even to make it safe to drive, it always costs more than that. So that's a perfect time to use K-Seal, because K-Seal will stop the coolant leak, and also it will stop the head gasket leak, whether it's a head gasket or a block or an engine, water pump. There's just so many parts of a cooling system that K-Seal, and by the way, it's a ceramic material, so it won't clog any radiators or what have you. What does that mean? It means if you have a car that's worth keeping, and it still costs you a lot of money to repair a small minor leak, let's say that you've got a radiator seam. That's a common problem, because radiators today are aluminum with plastic tanks, and sometimes the seal between the two different materials. So expansion and contraction rate's different. So if you've got a new or a newer or not so old Lexus or whatever you drive that has a minor leak, and you don't want to replace the part with the cost associated, then you can use K-Seal. But you can go to kseal.com and get all the information. But it's just a really great product that we use. Okay, let's shift gears, and I'll take your calls at 888 Car Clinic. Here's a question from G. Brown, who is a Watch Bobby Live listener and viewer. And for those of you not familiar, we're online video. I'll wave at the camera. We have an all digital camera and set up with Google, with YouTube rather, and so they broadcast this program, Globalcast, globally. So regardless of where you are in the world, you can watch us, and you can call us in real time. 888 Car Clinic. That's 888-227-2546. So here's a gentleman, and this is a valid question, and quite candidly, I'm not really sure I can help him 100%. And so I'll read you the question. Well, this is, again, is from an online chat room, and Jonathan Sloan is our chat room monitor, among other things that Jonathan brings to the table. He and Hannah. Hannah will take your calls at 888 Car Clinic. But here's an interesting question. So it's from G. Brown, a Watch Bobby Live listener and viewer. My 2019 Honda Accord 1.5 liter is coming up on its first oil change. Should I use the Liquid Moly Zero W20 brand? Your thoughts, please. Should I use a gas additive like Techron every oil change, since it's a direct injected engine? Turbocharged direct injection engine. Well, I'll answer the last question first. Should I use a gas additive like Techron? Techron is, of course, one of the early producers of fuel system cleaner, just like our Berryman B12 Chem Tool is a long-time producer of a fuel system cleaner. Those cleaners are wet cleaners. Now, what does that mean? There are two different systems in your engine's air intake and combustion process, air and fuel. I mean, that's pretty simple. I mean, you can put all the fuel in, you can put 1 billion gallons of fuel, but if you don't have air, it's not the fuel that burns, by the way, it's the fumes off the fuel. And I made this, analogy many years that you could sit me on top of 5 million gallons or 50,000 gallons or 5 gallons, and that come up into a little 4-inch neck. And as long as that 4-inch neck was level at the top, and I struck a match, only the fumes off of the top of all that fuel would burn. So the same thing's true in your combustion chamber, and that's one of it is the single biggest challenge that manufacturers have, engine builders, is trying to burn all of the fuel, because whatever is not burned is emissions. That's where emissions come from, and gasoline is dirty. It's toxic stuff with a lot of chemicals. In fact, I don't know, I bet you didn't know this, but gasoline has up to 1,000 different chemicals in gasoline. Anyway, I won't go into that, except to say, back to the question here. So the question, should I use a gas additive like Techron on every oil change since it's a direct injected engine? The answer is no. There's no reason to. Why? Because it's a direct injected engine. And so the Techron is a great product that will clean carbon from the back of the intake valve, but the gasoline doesn't flow that way anymore in this particular vehicle because it's a DI engine. So when you have a direct injection engine, the challenge is that fuel is sprayed into the combustion chamber. Now, obviously, the tip of the injector that's exposed to the combustion process certainly needs to be cleaned. So in that respect, yes, you can use a fuel system cleaner. Would it hurt the car if he used a fuel system cleaner every 5,000 miles? Absolutely not. Would it help the car stay clean? Would the engine stay clean? Yes, it would, but that's not going to correct the real problem. The real problem is the oil that collects on the back of the intake valve that bleeds down from the valve guide, because the valve guide goes up and down, the stem and the valve guide, and oil, even though there's a seal that stops oil from pouring in there or being sucked in because it's on the vacuum side, the intake vacuum side, there's still residual oil, just like the rings of a piston. A piston has a top compression ring, a second compression ring underneath that one, and then below those two compression rings, it has an oil control ring. And the oil control ring consists of two circular, dull razor blades. For all intents and purposes, they're scrapers. Two dull, round scraper rings, and then these rings are separated by a W-shaped, weaved, corrugated stainless steel, wide, and I say wide, let's say, an eighth of an inch wide, about 125, eighth of an inch or so, oil drain back. So the scraper rings scrape the oil back down into the crankcase of an engine when the piston goes down. And then whatever oil gets trapped or gets by the bottom scraper goes into the little corrugated spacer between the two scrapers, and then the piston has holes in it, and so that oil goes back into those holes and back behind and underneath the piston. And so when you have those oil rings that get carboned up, then carbon stops up those holes, and also carbon causes the scraper rings to stick. And of course, the ring fits the cylinder. The ring, and this is true, think about this, folks. You got a piston inside a hole, and the piston's, let's say, 1/1000th and a half smaller than the hole. It has to be smaller or it would seize. So then you've got rings. Well, the rings are captured in grooves. And so these grooves locate the rings. But the rings are not made to fit the piston. Well, they are, but they're made to fit the cylinder wall. So the rings ride on cylinder wall. If it weren't for oil, those rings wouldn't work. So oil doesn't just lubricate, it seals. So you always have to have a film of oil between the metal parts in your engine in order for that engine to operate and to live. A good example of dying would be to have a flooded engine in the morning that you crank and crank and crank and crank, and it doesn't start up for some reason, and then you continue to turn the starter over, and the gasoline continues to go in, and that gasoline washes the oil off the rings, and you lose compression. So we had a major Jaguar, I don't know, it's been 6 months ago, and here in the shop, that we saved the engine. It had 30 psi. It wouldn't start. It wouldn't run. And the owner had tried to crank it so many times because it had a timing chain issue, and we fixed that. But even after we fixed that, it still wouldn't start. And we did a miracle. We reseated the rings. I could tell you how I did it, but it would be giving up 48 years of experience. But it wasn't as much just the experience that allowed us to save that vehicle and save that engine. It was just the belief that there was a way to not replace that engine, because this gentleman had been told by a dealer in New Orleans and another independent shop they needed a new engine, and we saved that car, and that man wrote us a 5-star review for saving his engine, and it runs absolutely perfectly, flawlessly, idled so smoothly, and we reseated those rings and got them to reconnect with the walls of the engine. It's way, way, way cool. Okay, so back to Brown. So should you use an additive? It will not hurt. If it makes you feel good, you can use it. It's not going to stop the carbon behind the intake valve. And he also, he asked, should I use liquid moly? Well, I'm not familiar with liquid moly, but I'm molybdenum. I am familiar, and it's a good oil. Any known brand oil, if you change it, it's not the oil that saves the engine, it's the person that provides a proactive. I'll be back. An 02 F-150 came into the shop shifting erratically and slow to engage a few of its gears. The transmission fluid showed coolant, and the radiator coolant was low. The lack of cooling system maintenance had caused the transmission cooler tank inside the radiator to corrode and become porous, therefore mixing coolant and transmission fluid. As a result, the transmission fluid was contaminated, which led to transmission failure. The customer needed a transmission overhaul and a new radiator, an expensive repair that may have been avoided by regular cooling system maintenance. Now, considering this was a low-mileage truck that was very well optioned, the customer opted for the necessary repairs. We installed a new transmission and a radiator. We also flushed the entire cooling system and put in a new Motorrad Ultrastat thermostat and a new Motorrad cooling system pressure cap. The truck is now running fine. This repair spotlight is brought to you by Motorrad, your first choice for vehicle thermostats, closure caps, and engine management. For more information, go to motorrad.com.
You're listening to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
Waking up can be a chore, but mornings knocking on my front door. Know just what I'll do. Put on a pot of Folgers brew. Mountain grown aroma hits the spot. Helps me give all that I've got. An opportunity to start out smiling and happy. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
I'm privileged to be involved with Capstone Adaptive Learning, formerly known as United Cerebral Palsy, for over 25 years. Since 1953, Capstone has provided quality care programs for persons with developmental disabilities like autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and intellectual disabilities. Dr. Sherry White with her team are dedicated to Capstone's clients, and 100% of your contributions stay local to serve those in this community. Go to capstoneadaptivelearning.org to see the difference Capstone makes.
Technology moves at the speed of innovation, and today, that's lightning fast. So when you get your hands on the latest tech, don't forget to do the right thing with your old devices. Recycle them. The Consumer Technology Association and its members are making recycling your old tech device as easy as purchasing new ones. Just go to greenergadgets.org, type in your zip code, and you'll instantly find the responsible recycling location closest to your home. You'll also find lots of tips to simplify your recycling, like asking the store where you buy your new TV if they'll haul away your old one. Television sets, video game consoles, smartphones, tablets, they're all recyclable. Don't let them clog up your local landfill. Just visit greenergadgets.org. You're sharp enough to get the latest tech tools into your home. Now be responsible enough to get your old devices to the recycler. That's greenergadgets.org.
And now back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic and your host, Bobby Likis.
And welcome back to this segment of Bobby Likis Car Clinic. An interesting show, I hope. I hope you're enjoying the program. Hannah will take your calls at 888 Car Clinic and put you in a queue, and I'll put you on the air. But with regard to the gentleman at Watch Bobby Live and first oil change, he didn't ask this question, but I want to, I want to share this with you. If you have a new car and you want to go change the oil in it, you should wait. You should not change the oil any earlier than 3,500 miles. And most new cars run 7,500 miles, and some run 10,000. I do disagree with the initial oil change to wait 10,000. I disagree with 10,000 mile oil changes anyway, but I definitely would warn you that if and when you buy a new car, don't change the oil at 3,500 miles. And you say, well, why? It's okay to always change oil. It's not okay in this instance because the factory fill of oil is a controlled substance. It is controlled a lubricant that is used specifically by the manufacturer who made that engine. And so that manufacturer is going to use a specific oil that has two their criteria for that oil. First is the oil formulation that fits the design of the engine, the application. And you say, well, what's the application? Well, turbo or non-turbo. So there are different additives from turbo and non-turbo. Although you can use turbo oil in a non-turbo engine, there are some oils that work better in turbos because turbos produce more heat, more power from smaller engine. It's called engine density, power density. That's where you've got a V8 engine that puts out 450 horsepower with 5 liters. And then you've got a 1.5 liter 4-cylinder that puts out the same horsepower with a turbocharger. Now it works a lot harder. So the oil additives are different. So why would you not want to change the oil before 3,500? You want to give that engine time to wear in, to break in, and to make sure there are no oil leaks and it doesn't use oil. And it will take at least 3,500 miles before you can determine if that engine's going to be using any oil. So if you had changed the oil, like for instance years ago, the regimen was maybe 2,000 miles, 1,500 miles, then you change the oil. You could do it at 500, because there's, new wear, initial wear on the engine. This was long before we had the technology and metallurgy that we enjoy so much today that you don't even think about. So you want to give that engine time enough to wear in so that if you do have a problem, then the dealer, because the dealer is going to be responsible for repairing of that vehicle under the guidelines of the manufacturer. Understand that. So when a dealer says, well, wait a minute, you changed the oil at 1,000 miles or at 2,500 miles and you were supposed to have gone 7,500 miles, you could have caused this issue. So you don't want to put yourself in that predicament, in that potential for that predicament. So just chill out, wait, be cool, and put no less than 3,500 miles of any kind of driving you want to drive. That's the neat thing. And with a new engine, you're not supposed to go out and run it wide open and for long extended periods of time. But for my nickel, once an engine is up to operating temperature and it has the proper level of coolant and oil in it, you can drive it exactly how you want to drive it. I mean, if you want to, if you want to hot rod the engine, you're not going to hurt it. In fact, quite candidly, the electronics of a new car are trained during the first 150 to 300 miles by the driver. You drive a car really easily, it actually produces less power than a car that is aggressively driven because there's a learn cycle there. Anyway, let's take a call from Captain Jim. Captain Jim in Las Vegas, Nevada. Captain Jim, welcome. Good morning to Bobby Likis Car Clinic. Nice to have you in the show again.
Oh, it's great to be here. I just wanted to give you a follow-up on that problem I had with the battery that I talked to you about.
Okay, please do.
And you actually saved the day with the information you gave me. As you may recall, I was reading voltage between the negative and the frame of the car on the battery.
Right.
And as it turns out, the battery was giving me nice voltages. I thought I had it all charged up. But you said, well, best to take it to and get it looked at, professionally besides my Mickey Mouse meters.
Okay.
And anyway, you told me to disconnect the negative side and leave it off so that it wouldn't drain the battery because we thought we had a parasitic draw on it.
Right.
So I did that, and by doing that, I figured everything was okay, and so the next morning, I hooked the battery back up, went to start the car, and it wouldn't start, even though the battery was showing 13 volts.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't turn the engine over. So then that told me the battery had to be bad. And so I took it to Ford, and sure enough, they did a battery test on it, and we had to replace the battery. And they told me that you will have a slight draw on that side because when you touch the terminal back to the battery, the computer right away, it actually flashes the parking lights on the car and then restarts everything in the compuure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess they shut themselves off later. I don't know how that works.
They do time out. That's correct.
I just want you to know you did really, really help me because had I not disconnected it, I'd have been going down the wrong rabbit hole. And so I do appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad. Thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback. And, Captain Jim, the cars that of today, as we spoke, and folks, this gentleman and I spoke this week offline, and he had an issue there, and we started out using text, if you remember, Captain Jim, and so finally I said, this is not going to work. My fingers won't do that text that quickly anyway, so I picked up the phone and gave you a call the other evening, and we talked about what would be the first next best step, and sure enough, and here was the moral of the story, and Captain Jim, as you so eloquently reported, a battery that's in a low state of charge, unless you've got a good battery charger, will stay in a low state of charge, or if it has a parasitic draw, that's a given. But a known good quality battery in a known good quality car, if you disconnect the battery and the negative side of that vehicle, and then you hook it back up, there will be voltage draw. There's a certain amount of parasitic voltage draw on all cars 24/7. And that's what was confusing, as you and I know now, that's what was confusing you because you were using a voltmeter to connect the battery to the frame. You disconnected the negative cable and then used a voltmeter to check for any draw, and sure enough, you had it because it was trying to fire up the car again, and that was what was throwing you off. So I'm glad that it turned out to be something so simple as a battery, because there are computers, and I'll tell you, Captain Jim, the real issue that we have when we have something that's even more detailed than this and gets a little more deeper into the architecture, and when you have a definite, like a module that is drawing voltage, it's difficult to determine which module, because all of the modules talk to one another, and so you could have a check engine light that was on, for example, because the gas cap was left off, and once the check engine light comes on, then the stability track, the stable track as GM calls it, or the SRS, which is what Lexus calls it, the SRS light would come on. So you got a check engine light, and all of a sudden you got the SRS light, and you say, oh, I have two systems that are a problem. And it's not a problem with the SRS. It's just that the SRS, the safety restraint system and ABS brake system, depends on the engine, the stability track, which is the traction control, depends on the engine's controls to do its job. So it's like, and folks, this gentleman was John Wayne's captain for years. It's just like you're driving your boat, your yacht there, and you've got let's say you've got an alternator or a battery issue, and so the light comes on with a battery issue. Well, you don't keep driving it. You say, as the captain of the boat, you said, we've got to find a shore. We've got to repair this because I know it can't work. So to that end, you, as the human that you are and the captain that you are, made the decision and would make the decision to have whatever was wrong repaired. In our cars, there are different systems that hold their hand up and say, hey, don't count on me to do my job because the engine is not healthy and it can't do its job. Even though I'm okay, don't count on me. And so we'll have a lot of cars that come in that have multiple warning lights on with only one problem. And therein lies the real talent of a technician, is which problem do you address first? Which fire do you put out first? So that's where the experience comes in. Well, I'm really I'm glad that you followed up, and I'm glad that everything was really cool. I was concerned, and so I'm proud you took it to a pro, and they did you a good service. So I thank you very much. Good talking with you. Yeah, he's a neat guy.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. So, was that you, Fabio? No? Okay. Thank you, Captain Jim. And folks, I didn't ask him a story, but because I do every time he calls in, and so therefore I haven't heard from him for 6 months. But this gentleman does tell stories about being the captain for John Wayne, and it was really interesting. He sent me pictures and what have you. Here's another question from a gentleman on Watch Bobby Live. I'm restoring a vehicle. It's an early 63 Ford Fairlane, to be exact, and among the unusual items that I inspected and replaced about the vehicle after it sat for a long time, he had a cracked ear on the intake manifold, one of those tabs, where the bolts go on. What advice could you give me to properly remedy this situation? Well, don't throw that manifold away, number one. Just because it has a cracked ear, you can use, we use, for instance, JB Weld. If you're working on a project like this 63 Ford, or folks, even if you're working on a project around the house, we use JB Weld that stuff is so great, it just works, and it lasts, and it's really strong, and what you want to do is you want to make the right choice. You want to get the right job, the right JB Weld for the job. And here in our shop, we bond a lot of things. My headphone amp, for instance, had to be bonded because I had to replace it, and I had it attached to the underside of my host table. And that way I could plug my ears in my 1/4-inch jack from my headphone in and out and turn it, but the bottom line, I had to install a new one. And I didn't want to drill a hole in my desk. So I used JB Well. I mean, it's a brand that the pros and experienced DIYers have trusted for more than 50 years. It's the world's strongest bond. So it's a product that you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's or AutoZone, Walmart, Amazon. Oh, and our partner, O'Reilly Auto Parts, stocks it as well. And you can learn more at jbwell.com. So I say to JG on Watch Bobby Live, don't toss that manifold away, because those older cars, those parts are valuable. So you go to O'Reilly Auto Parts and you pick up JB Weld and you follow the directions, and you can make that manifold work just like it did when Ford Motor Company built that engine back in, let's see what he said, in 1963. Yeah, it'll be good as new. Folks, that's all the time that we have for this hour of Bobby Likis Car Clinic. I want to thank you for tuning in. I know that we have Sid and James that are on the line from Nebraska and also from New York. So I'm going to ask those two gentlemen if they'll just hang with us, because we've got another great hour coming up of Bobby Likis Car Clinic. And, it reminds me, days like today, should I keep my car and trade it, or buy a bigger, bullet and trade it in? And that really depends on the care that you and your local provider. So if there's anything you can take away from today's program, any words of wisdom that I shared with you, just make a connection, create a connection to a local service shop, so that you'll have a pro to help you. I'm Bobby Likis. Thanks for tuning in. Another hour coming up. Like us, you'll love us.
This is Bobby Likis Car Clinic. Bobby Likis Car Clinic is a copyrighted presentation of Car Clinic Productions Incorporated and may not be reproduced or rebroadcast without the express written approval of Car Clinic Productions Incorporated.
Folks, you know that tune-ups are often scheduled at 100,000 miles, but carbon constantly builds up on the valves and the combustion chambers inside an engine. Fuel injectors can also become clogged. Thanks to Berryman, with their 4-step professional air and fuel management kit, we can clean both the wet side, which is the fuel side, and the dry side, which is the intake manifold side of your engine. We use Berryman's 4-step professional air and fuel management maintenance kit to clean the fuel system and decarbonize both the wet and dry side every 30 to 40,000 miles. It features mass airflow sensor cleaner, air intake and throttle body cleaner, an intake valve and combustion chamber cleaner, and a liquid pourable professional fuel system cleaner. Learn more about Berryman's 4-step professional air and fuel management maintenance kit at berrymanproducts.com. That's berrymanproducts.com.
You're listening to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
If you're familiar with the Kulseford section of the newspaper, you probably understand this message quite well. You see, in the Kulseford section, everything gets abbreviated. Consonants, vowels, prepositional phrases, the very building blocks of our language are thrown right out the window. And that makes it difficult when you're trying to sell your car. You've got a limited amount of space to work with, and by the time you abbreviate the description of your car down to a couple of fragmented sentences, it sounds less like a car and more like a Bluck sedan with sniffed like new condition lemals. No wonder more people are selling their cars through eBay Motors. They can post unlimited text and photo descriptions, and with a nationwide marketplace, they're likely to sell it for more. Plus, both parties can be covered by eBay's Vehicle Protection Program. Buyers are happy, sellers are happy, and no one's abbreviating. eBay Motors, a better way to sell your car.
Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Countdown to 3-minute mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Bobby Likis Car Clinic begins at 6 minutes after the hour. Countdown to 1-minute mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Countdown to 30-second mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Countdown to 10-second mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Welcome to Bobby Likis Car Clinic. If you have a car question for Bobby, call now at 1-800-264-5454, toll-free from anywhere in America. And now, here's your host, Bobby Likis.
And thank you, Marty White. Good morning, folks. Welcome to this second hour of Bobby Likis Car Clinic, maybe the first hour in your neighborhood. If so, sit back and ride along with us for a while. And Hannah will take your calls at 888 Car Clinic and put them in the queue, and I'll put you on the air. I know that James from New York was held over from our first hour, and thank you, James, for your patience. We'll be coming to you as we come back from this hard break. Bobby Likis Car Clinic is brought to you in part this morning by the Ford Professional Service Network. That's the FordPSN.com. And that Ford Professional Service Network, folks, offers training and discounts and rewards to automotive repair facilities just like Bobby Likis Car Clinic when we buy Ford, Motorcraft, and Omnicraft parts. What are Omnicraft parts? That means that it's Ford quality OEM parts that are manufactured to fit other automobiles in addition to the Ford make cars. It's a great service. It's a great partnership that we enjoy because of the warranty that we can provide. And we got a Lincoln or Mercury car in here. We've got what it takes, just like the dealer. The OEM connection's really terrific. I'm going to come back and take your calls at 888-227-2546. James will be up next. Time for another edition of Cooling System Q&A, brought to you by Motorrad, your first choice for vehicle thermostats and caps. Why is the thermostat so important? Cooling system regulates engine temperature and helps prevent overheating. While it's comprised of several components, the thermostat plays a critical role with efficient cooling system operation. It must regulate coolant flow properly to maintain a specific engine operating temperature, in addition to providing quick warm-up. Motorrad's new stainless steel thermal element Ultrastat is unmatched for corrosion resistance. Its revolutionary Reax wax mixture provides quicker reaction time. The Ultrastat also features bilinear valve technology, which prevents thermal shock to cooling system components, gradually increasing coolant flow versus instant maximum flow found in traditional thermostats. The Ultrastat precisely controls engine temperature to ensure the lowest emission standards, maximum fuel efficiency, and terrific interior cabin comfort. The Motorrad Ultrastat line is the perfect thermostat upgrade option with coverage for over 160 million vehicles on the road today. Motorrad, leading the way in coverage and service. We recently had an 09 Honda Pilot come into the shop with 169,000 miles on the odometer. The vehicle owner said the cabin was starting to smell like coolant, and he was concerned. Upon closer inspection, we found a heater core leak. Choices were to keep the vehicle and make a repair, which at best is half a day's labor plus parts, or sell the vehicle and buy a different used car that could have its own set of problems. We presented a third option, K-Seal. You've heard me talk about K-Seal before. Well, I don't just talk about it, we actually use the product in our service shop. It's a pour-in solution designed to stop leaks and help prevent future leaks. Other sealers use sodium silicate, which has a tendency to clog the system. K-Seal features ceramic technology that's designed to repair the leak without clogging. Our customer went with K-Seal, and 1 month later, no more leak. Learn more about K-Seal at kseal.com. Don't just seal it, K-Seal it.
You're listening to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
Another lending success story from LendingTree.com.
Car dealers like playing games. They play percentage points, they play markups, but I don't like playing with my money. So I got my auto loan through LendingTree.com. I filled out one simple form, a marketplace of banks and lenders competed over it, and I got 4 offers back within hours. After all, the car buying game is a lot easier to win when you're holding all the cards.
LendingTree.com. When banks compete, you win. For additional information and state license disclosures, please visit our website located at lendingtree.com.
Driving has a rhythm all its own. Don't wreck it with a text. Before you get behind the wheel, silence your phone. Or better yet, designate a texter. For more text-free driving tips, visit stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
And now back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic and your host, Bobby Likis.
Okay, let's get started with this hour of Bobby Likis Car Clinic. Hannah will take your calls and put you in the queue, and I will put you on the air, and we'll talk cars. I'll answer your car questions and share with you information that actually you'd be hard-pressed to find anywhere else, especially at the price, which is, we come to you free. Actually, we're able to provide this information for you due to the support of our partner sponsors and yours truly. So let's go to New York, talk with James. James, thanks for holding. You've been there for a while. You're first in, so you're first up. How you doing this morning?
This is Gene from New York. With maybe she just got the name wrong, Bobby.
Oh, Gene. Okay. Thank you. Gene. So, Hannah, that's Gene, not James. But I got you now, Gene. So what can I do for you?
Yeah, I talked to you before, Bobby. I'm about 20 miles east of Owego, and I know you know where that is because of Shangri-La. Okay.
Yeah.
I talked to you before.
Yes, sir.
Bobby, I got a 2013 Ford Focus hatchback, my wife. We bought it brand new. It's only got 48,000 miles. Well, little did I know, but, after a year or so, I found out that they haven't had recalls on a car like, well, I guess you know about the 2013 hatchbacks. Maybe you don't, because you don't own one, but maybe you see a lot of them in your shop. Well, I had it called back for a number of things. A shutter in the transmission, the transmission control modules, where sometimes you lack power. Sometimes it's no start, sometimes it causes other electrical circuit failures. Side door locks, another kind of CPV valve, this and that. Well, to make a long story short, for the last couple of months now, Bob, you go up there in the morning or at night, whenever, after the car's been sitting 4 or 5 hours, she fires right up. I could drive at 20 miles, Bob, pull over, go into get gas or something at the pumps, come back out. It doesn't want to start. It doesn't want to crank, Bob.
Right.
It doesn't want to crank. Every time I try to start it, I hear something going on in the tailgate, some kind of clicking. I don't believe it's the fuel pump clicking in the tank. It seems more like it's coming from the rear hatchback, So I don't know if there's some kind of relay back there or what. Well, normally after 5 or 10 minutes of sitting there, maybe 15, she'll start back up, okay? But the other day, twice I got stuck, hour and a half.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know. Nothing gets you more than that when it's 95 degrees out.
Well, not only that, Gene, it's the fact that you don't know. I mean, we had a similar, to make a long story short, we had a single-parent mother who had a vehicle that had, it always started, it had extended crank times, meaning that it go, and so you're used to your car, and so
right.
you'll turn the key loose. Well, she would turn the key loose, and at first she says, well, I'm not holding it long enough, and then she'd, and then it always started, but it made her uncomfortable. And I told this story before, so I won't go into it again, except to say that we put a fuel pump bucket. Well, bucket means a module, which includes all the wiring and the gauge and yada yada, the whole 9 yards, because all that's the way you should replace it. And it's become de facto now versus just replacing a fuel pump. And so we put a new bucket in that vehicle. As it turned out, the part that we used was defective, and it cost this company 2 weeks. It cost us a customer because she didn't come back, although it was our nickel that we fixed the car, finally fixed her vehicle. But it was so frustrating for her, and here was her whole, the whole gist of it. She said, I have to pick up my child from school. I'm responsible for my job, and I get in my car, it's supposed to crank and run. And what am I going to say but you're right? And she was right. And so we stuck by her, and I will tell you, Johnny Bars, our guru, he's Bobby Likis in our shop. He's our master ASE certified technician. He is our shop foreman, and I will tell you, he and I worked on this vehicle together, and from every option it was like no fuel pressure, and you couldn't test fuel pressure, so I said, let's put a pressure regulator. You had to pull the intake manifold. I wish I was the engineer. I wish I was talking to the engineer at Ford Motor Company. We had to pull the intake manifold off the vehicle just to gain access to the fuel pressure regulator underneath the intake manifold. And I mean,
like the North Star, that's where the starter is.
Really, anyway, so the bottom line is ultimately, we put an OEM Ford Motorcraft fuel pump assembly and fix the problem. But let's go back to yours. So where are you now?
Where am I now? Well, I'm home now.
No, I mean with a repair. Where
it's going back to the dealership, Simmons Rockwell, in Halstead, Pennsylvania.
Right.
Because I'm figuring nobody could really figure it out, and I figure, hey, maybe they have one of those $80,000 machines. They can plug it in, and maybe it'll go to the problem. But then again, maybe not, right, Bob?
Well, here's the issue, and just so you'll know, because I've been on both sides of this fence all my life. Where's the customer? The car runs like Attila the Hun for you, and then it comes to the shop and it runs like Miss Manners, as we say. So here's the bottom line: if it's an erratic situation, then it may or may not. I mean, if you pick me up for lunch after the show and we went to lunch together and it might crank and run and run perfectly. Or it might not.
It might. And then again, it might not. It's got if we park it for 10 or 15 minutes and come back, 90% chance it ain't going to start.
Well, that's good. That's good because now it's not one of those on again, off again, and just by the time you're going to prove it to someone, like to a shop. And if you drove it into you're in Pennsylvania, you drove it to the shop and you shut it down, and then
he tries it and it starts right up.
Yeah. I see. That's the whole point. But here's what I recommend, and I used to recommend the little how to fix your car with a palm-size spiral notebook. And of course now is how to fix your car with your iPhone. And so
well, not me, Bobby.
No, but I'm saying here's what I was talking about. Used to, I would tell folks to jot down certain things that happen, and such as the engine temperature, whether or not it's raining outside, what the outside temperature is, how long you run that vehicle, and then how long you let it sit. So these are notes, mental notes that you know because you've lived with this for long enough. So now you have these mental notes of, and think about it, because when you go in, the person you talk with, you're going to have to convey to that person something other than, well, it doesn't crank at times. Because
I got quite a few notes, Bobby, and I know all the times. And it isn't like, Bobby, the longer you run the car. I've driven the car 100 miles, Bob.
Yep.
Okay, shut it off,
right,
and come back, and wait 10 minutes. It didn't start. Wait 10, 15 minutes, and she fired up.
Right.
I mean, when I went from here to Olam's to buy a new TV, I drove 4 miles. It was the first time I drove it all day, so it didn't get that hot. That day, it didn't want to start for an hour and a half.
Wow.
Abby, I'm just wondering if this, on the recall it had, they told me that it doesn't meet certain for this. It says on your vehicle, the VIN shows that the TMC, which transmission control module, experiences electrical circuit failures causing intermittent symptoms of loss of transmission engagement while driving, no start, or lack of power. Okay, I had that lack of power. I could tell you're getting on the highway, you step on it, you have nothing.
Right.
But when it says no start, Bobby,
yeah,
I mean, that's what I have.
So this recall, this recall has been performed on this vehicle, right?
Warranty problem, Bob. Now all of a sudden, because of these problems, that transmission is guaranteed for 10 years or whatever they said.
All right. So here's what I want you to do. So here's what I want you to do. You're still with me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to convey all this information to the dealer, and I want you to ask the dealer to connect your car to the OEM website and determine if there's an update that is currently available for your vehicle. It doesn't matter if it's for a rear tailpipe. We don't care. We just want to know from the dealer if your vehicle is listed, and the only way they can do that is not by the serial number, but by connecting it online with Ford Motor Company using the VIN. Anyway, that's what you should do, and then get back to me. In the service bay this week, a longtime customer's 2000 Ford Taurus. He'd been complaining about a humming noise at highway speeds and grinding when he stopped. With 55,000 miles on the odometer, the driver's had the vehicle since new and never had any work done. No brakes, no suspension. A thorough inspection revealed a number of potential problems: a failing left front wheel bearing, worn-out rear brake pads and rotors, and the beginnings of a leaking brake caliper. Our choice to solve these problems? Motorcraft. Brake systems and suspension repair represent serious work you want done right the first time. Choosing quality parts is critical to ensuring vehicle reliability and longevity. Motorcraft quality brake and suspension parts are engineered for Ford and Lincoln vehicles. From the hub to the rotor, calipers, brake pads, and wheel bearings, Motorcraft quality parts provide you with the stopping power and stability needed for your vehicle. Learn more about Motorcraft brake and suspension parts at motorcraft.com. That's motorcraft.com. Motorcraft, right part, priced right. We recently performed a major service on a 1996 F-150. The vehicle had just under 200,000 miles on it. In addition to fluids and filters, we changed the spark plugs and boots, performed a cooling system flush, and replaced the thermostat, hoses, and drive belts. After a few weeks, the owner noticed a small leak coming from the area where the transmission bolted onto the block. Using a pressure tester, we found that coolant was seeping from one of the freeze plugs at the rear of the engine. This repair would require several hours of labor and another few days or so in the shop. Given the truck's age and the fact it was just in the shop for service, we suggested K-Seal, a one-step permanent multi-purpose system for coolant leak repair that won't clog radiators or heater cores. K-Seal stops leaks and can also prevent future leaks. After driving the truck for a week, the owner called and let us know the leak had stopped. K-Seal's available at fine retailers everywhere, like Napa Auto Parts. Don't just seal it, K-Seal it.
You're listening to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
Telephone tip.
From Geico Auto Insurance.
When calling Geico to switch your car insurance, you will not need acetaminophen, naproxen, indomethacin, ibuprofen, a cold compress, an on-call acupuncturist, or any other pain remedy. In 15 minutes, you could save 15% or more. If it were any more painless, you could do it in your sleep, which is theoretically possible since we offer complete 24-hour service. Call 1-800-947-AUTO, 1-800-947-AUTO. Geico Direct, the sensible alternative.
When you purchase the latest TV, tablet, or smartphone, don't forget to do the right thing with your old ones. Recycle them. The Consumer Technology Association and its members are making recycling your old devices as easy as buying new ones. Just go to greenergadgets.org, type in your zip code, and you'll instantly find the recycling location closest to your home. You'll also find recycling tips, like asking the store where you buy your new TV if they'll haul away your old one. Don't let your old tech tools clog your local landfill. Just visit greenergadgets.org.
And now back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic and your host, Bobby Likis.
And welcome back to this segment of Bobby Likis Car Clinic, brought to you in part by Motorrad. your first choice for vehicle thermostats, closure caps, and engine management systems. You learn more about their products and the industry-leading application coverage at motorred.com. That's motorred.com. Hannah will take your call, 888-227-2546, and put you in the queue, and I will put you on the air. So let's say you've got a front-wheel drive or a rear drive, but obviously what's common, well, transmission. Transmission is located in the front of the vehicle. Obviously, in the front-wheel drive, the transmission would be located over to one side. Generally speaking, the transmission is going to be on the driver's side. So let's say that you've got the two front wheels, tires, and you've got the left one and the right one, and you've got a transmission leak, which can be very costly unless you take care of it immediately, so you have to watch for any fluids, whether it's transmission fluid or oil or, heaven forbid, gasoline or coolant under your vehicle. So just remember, folks, that if you've got a right front tire and you see any fluid like red, brown transmission fluid, let's say, in this case, and from our folks at O'Reilly Auto Parts, it's a tip that they mail out to folks to help them take care of their car. So I'm just sharing that with you. You want to look under the vehicle, and when you back the vehicle up, if that spot is located between both front wheels, but sort of toward the rear, if you drew a line between both front wheels toward the rear, because it's not a front-wheel drive but a rear-drive vehicle, then that would be a transmission leak. If that same leak was leaking for a front-wheel drive, then that leak is going to be about midway between the left and right front wheel, but over to one side, more like the steering wheel. If you were to think about the steering wheel shaft aiming, and you've got a transmission fluid right where the steering wheel shaft, if it continued on to the ground, right there, then you can pretty well rest assured you've got a transmission leak. Regardless, you want to take it in and have it inspected and have it repaired and replaced. And that tip, courtesy of our friends at O'Reilly Auto Parts, and they do a great job. They being, for us, happen to be located right up the street, so they make us look good because we can get our customers' cars in and out in a timely fashion with the right part, because we can get it from the professionals there at O'Reilly Auto Parts. I see that we have David coming in. I want to share, before I put David on the air, the gasoline prices for the nation. And as we talked about, this is $1 million bet that Fabio and I had, that the first week when we had that Iranian shot the drone down in the Sea of Hormuz Straits, rather. So I said, well, gas prices are going to go up this next week. And they did not. It took 2 weeks, but they did go up. And so this is the third week since that event. And so what's the gas price? If you compare gas prices this past week, they're $2.74 nationally average price, $3.37.9, so $3.38 on the West Coast. And in 7 out of 10 regions, gas prices are higher this week than they were same time last week. So I'm not sure what all goes into the formulation of gas prices, but I do know that a lot of pressure from manufacturing or refinery, and shipment of crude. I dare say, I will say this, and it's a known fact. People talk about gasoline prices. Not included in the gasoline price is the military protection that we provide to ensure safe delivery of crude. If it were, gasoline per gallon would be somewhere between $12 and $15 a gallon. If you were to add in the military cost that it takes to deliver the crude, that's a fact. That's rarely, if ever, mentioned. And I won't get into that because there's a lot of political statements involved. But I just want you to know that if you talk to any true economist and say, what's the real cost of a gallon of gasoline that uses imported crude, it's more than $10 a gallon right here in the United States. We're not talking about what it is overseas. David has a 05 Lincoln. David, welcome to Bobby Likis Car Clinic. Thank you for holding.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you, and I appreciate you taking my call.
Thank you.
As I'd stated, I've got a 2005 Lincoln Town Car, 210,000 miles on it.
Okay.
I bought it new. Excuse me. Bought it new and developed a problem with the air conditioning. And doing a little bit of checking, well, let me tell you what the symptoms are.
Okay.
I've had the air conditioning checked. They tell me the gas charge is right up to snuff. However, periodically, I'll be driving along, and it would seem like it takes between 30 and 45 minutes for this instance to occur. The air will change over from the vents in the dash, and it appears as though it's being vented up underneath the dash. I can feel cold air coming out my feet, although I don't feel it in any particular volume. And I've been told that by someone who has some knowledge that it's like an air mass balance flapper or something.
A blend door.
What could you tell me?
A blend door, yeah. They're blend doors. There are in the HVAC box, and that box is usually it's about 20 inches by. It could be 30. It could be 25 inches. It's a big box, okay.
Yes.
And so it wouldn't fit on your shelf in your home. That's for sure. And so this box has within it the heater core, the air conditioner core, and it's all the compartments and passageways that allow it to blow out the vents through the dash, or the feet, or both, or the air conditioner blows out, and as does the heat when it's blended, the defrost, because the air conditioning system does two things. It cools and also dehumidifies. So anytime you turn the defroster on, I mean, a lot of people used to say, well, my air conditioner, it doesn't work, and it worked last summer, and I haven't used it since last summer. Well, yes, you do. You use it every time you put the defroster on, because the defroster uses heat from the engine to the heater core and the air conditioner to dehumidify the windshield. So these doors that your friend is correct. They are blend doors. And David, those blend doors are controlled by, in older cars, vacuum pods, like a vacuum advance on a chamber. It's a little.
I see.
It's like the size of a small tangerine with a diaphragm and a lever, and you put a vacuum to it, and it would pull it pulls. So it's a little motor.
Yes.
It's a little vacuum operated motor. Well, now, because the blending is controlled by electronics, then there are electric motors that, instead of using vacuum to pull that system, those electric motors, they're called actuators, will move that door. And what's really cool about this, and you say, well, why? Because they being the manufacturers can know exactly where that blend door is, because the little shaft that holds the blend door, like a hinge, the hinge has a potentiometer on it. And so the body control module, which is the electronic part of your Lincoln that knows where that blend door is, it has a measuring device or a potentiometer, and not only does it have a motor that moves the blend door, but as that blend door rotates on a shaft, it actually measures the position of the shaft, so it knows where the blend door is. And so if we wanted 75 degrees, then it would blend 30% heat and 70% air. It depends on the ambient temperature, of course. So,
I see.
And if you want full coal, then it goes to the full, closed heat part. So yes, you do have a problem in the dash, and here's what you have to do in order to fix that. You want a professional who has been there and done that to diagnose that system, because you don't have to you should not, hopefully, have to remove the HVAC, because that's very costly. There are actuators that can be replaced without removing it. And I'll give you an example. I think it was a Toyota product. I'm pretty sure it was a Toyota product. The right actuator, it had dual control. So the right actuator you could gain access to by removing the glove compartment, because that's a pretty big hole there, and you could get to it. So it was about an hour job to replace an actuator on the right side. The driver's side actuator was like a 7-hour job, because it was buried behind the steering column, and there is no glove box on the right side, and you couldn't pull the cluster out and get to it. You had to drop the console and pull the unit halfway out of the vehicle just to gain access to the little 2 screws that hold this thing in place. So you want to go to a service shop and have them to check the system. And the good news is, because it's an 05, it has an OBD2, which is a onboard diagnostics 2 computer, and that system can be operated not with a regular code reader, not with like go to a parts store and they read the codes. You're not looking for that. We in the industry have a professional tool that not only reads the code, it gets into the architecture of the software, and we can operate those blend doors, and we can see where blend door A is relevant to the air conditioner control. So that's what you're going to have. You're going to have a HVAC specialist that is going to perform some tests and then give you the prognosis and give you the cost estimate after some dollars and time are invested to determine what next steps are. Any questions?
Yes. Would you then recommend a dealership's repair facility?
It depends on
the technical nature of it.
Depends. I mean, it depends on, number one, where you are, and if you have a relationship. Certainly, feel free to go to a dealership. That's fine, or an independent that's qualified. But you know the dealership is, so it might not be a bad idea. Going to take John's call when I come back. Talking tunes? No, not the ones on your radio, the ones that allow you to reprogram your vehicle's factory computer, giving you more power, more torque, and a better overall driving experience. We recently sat down with Jim McGinn, Vice President of Marketing for Power Tech. Jim touched on the role a tuner plays when adding an intake or exhaust system.
Anytime you add an intake or an exhaust system, it's important to make sure that you have a tune equipped to help those hard parts work well together on your vehicle. The magic and beauty of the Diablo Sport tuners and the Reaper Stage 1 kits are that you get an air-fuel mixture that is already designed and engineered for the particular setup that you may be running to electronically compensate for the intake and the exhaust on your vehicles. Diablo Sport Jammer intake tunes make tuning easy anytime you add an intake or an exhaust.
Whether it's the Predator, the Intune i3, or the Trinity 2, you can find the perfect tune at DiabloSport.com. That's DiabloSport.com.
You're listening to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
More than 1 million wild animals are killed each year illegally. Poaching is a major threat to our country's wildlife. I'm Tom Barry. I'm an actor with a desire to preserve living space for wildlife. The Humane Society Wildlife Land Trust does just that. Works with private landowners to protect wildlife, to preserve natural habitats. To learn more or to work with the Humane Society Wildlife Land Trust, call 800-729-SAVE. That's 800-729-SAVE, or visit wildlifelandtrust.org. Thank you.
Did you know 26 million Americans have kidney disease and most don't know it?
The day I was diagnosed, I didn't know what to do. I called the National Kidney Foundation, and the young lady who answered stayed on the phone with me and walked me through step by step. She too was surviving kidney disease, and she showed me there could be life after kidney disease.
Visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org. Now you know.
We're a land of cynics. We don't believe anything anymore. You know why? Because we've been told we've won $1 million, that it's new and improved, that it slices and dices. That our favorite singer is still alive? That we'll be prosecuted if we cut off the tags? And of course that everything is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So when we hear the words customer service, we don't believe it. Travelocity isn't surprised if you're a little skeptical when they say they have excellent customer service. And that there's actually a pleasant face behind this website. A living, breathing person with a supercharged computer full of answers. Someone who's willing to help when you get lost. And most of all, someone that will actually pick up the phone when you call with a question or a concern. Customer service is just another example of how Travelocity puts you in control of travel. Chances are you'll never have to use it, but it's good to know it'll be there if you need it. Travelocity.com. Go virtually anywhere.
And now back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic and your host, Bobby Likis.
And welcome back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic. So as we were speaking with David there before the break, and he said, well, should I go to a dealer or where should I go? And of course, the dealer technicians at a Lincoln Mercury dealership or whatever dealership it is, whatever you drive, they have all the tools and the service, and they have information. Independent shops also have that information, but not every independent shop does. And so because independent shops are just that, independent, what their capability is depends on the direction of the owner of that service shop. And I'll give you an example. We are sort of the de facto Lexus service shop because there's no dealer within 60 miles of our city. And so we service a lot of Lexus cars. To that end, I invested as the owner of the company in the software. So our team has the same software a dealer has to diagnose and test Lexus cars and service them. But that's a choice. So because we're in a unique position, and they're really darn good cars too. Toyota makes really great cars. I don't drive one, but if you were to ask me what used car to buy, I would say buy a Toyota product. Let's go to John. John, thanks for holding. Welcome to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
Yeah, hi, Bobby.
Hi, sir.
You there?
I am. I'm waiting on you.
Oh. Here's my question today for you.
Okay.
Can we expect less mileage of summer blend fuel than winter blend fuel?
No.
No. Well.
No, and here's the point. Gas mileage is determined. Average gas mileage of a vehicle, or specific gas mileage of a vehicle, is determined by the weather, the driver, and the speed. so
I've got two late model GMs.
Okay.
And one's a 19, one's an 18, and they both drop 3 miles a gallon as soon as the summer blend come in. And that's why I asked the question. Now, one more question is, do they have the 19 only has 2,700 miles on it. Do they have a braking program that might give us different mileage than after it's over?
Repeat that question again.
Do the manufacturers have a braking program for a brand new car to get it through the braking process? Then later on in time, it might be
yes.
what the engine's running on.
Yes and no. They don't create a program relevant to MPG. They manufacture and formulate and program engine tune modules, or ECMs, electronic control unit, or powertrain, PCMs, powertrain control unit, that learn the driver's driving habits to as it refers or relates to transmission shift timing, engine timing, and so forth. And I'll give you a perfect example. Let's take a Lexus that calls for premium fuel, and not a supercharged car, because just a regular V8 Lexus or Toyota 4-cylinder, but not a turbocharged, because let's say it calls for premium fuel. And I've been asked this question many times. Can you use And is it okay to use lower octane gasoline in a vehicle that is that calls for premium? And the answer is absolutely. Will it damage the engine? Absolutely not. And the reason that it won't damage the engine is because the engine has knock sensors. And see, octane, John, you talked about summer blend, but that has to do with Reid vapor pressure, or the evaporative pressure and temperature before that fuel, if it goes from liquid to a vapor. And so that's what you're referring to. But in the big scheme of things, 87 octane is the anti-AKI, is the anti-knock property of that fuel. So if an engine calls for premium, and I say you can use lower octane 87, then that engine would cause itself to knock because the AKI, the anti-knock index of that low octane fuel, doesn't meet the specifications for that premium engine under normal operating circumstances. However, when you have a computer on board and knock sensors, the first thing that the computer does is detune the engine by retarding the timing. And so you could take a perfectly good car. Let's take my car, for example. My car has a 5-liter, normally aspirated, which just means no turbocharger, no supercharger, V8 engine with 11.5 to 1 compression ratio. It's a 13 Jaguar. Now, a muscle car, 427 Chevrolet, used to have 11 to 1 compression ratio, and we said, man, this is wow, it's got 11 to 1. And yet the car that I drive this morning, has 11.5 to 1. I can use low octane. I don't, because I would have reduced power. And to that end, I went the other way, and I blended E30, 30% ethanol into, and I have 4 tanks that I have results on. I blended E30 so that I could ensure that even under the most aggressive driving, like nailing the throttle wide open, accelerating onto an on-ramp, which I do because I have a direct engine that is building carbon in the intake manifold, and I'm trying to exercise that engine to the best of its ability. I know that's good for it. So I did the exact opposite. I blended myself E30 that had, let's see, I'm going to say 101 octane. But let's just say that I'm a little optimistic there. Let's say it was 95 octane. Doesn't matter. It was higher octane than I could buy locally anywhere within 500 miles. And I did this so that I could ensure that no pinging or no knocking ever occurred, so that my computer would say, hey, there's no knock, let's bump the timing. Hey, there's no knock, he's nailed the throttle, we're under a load, we're turning 6,000 RPM, let's bump the timing. And I did that so that, number one, I could see if my check engine light would come on. I did that so that I could feel, so I could get more power out of my engine, because our friends at Super Chips don't make a kit for my car. If they did, I'd have one. And so they don't make a tuner for my car. So I self-tuned it. So I said all that to say that all new cars, and even when you go to a service shop and we have to reflash or reprogram the computer to repair, let's say it had a bad widget, and we replaced the widget and we had to reprogram the vehicle, it being, there are called drive cycles. Your car, like any new car, has to go through X amount of drive cycles, which means you get up in the morning, you crank it up, and you drive it till it's warm, and the next day you do the same thing. 4, 5, and 6 of those drive cycles in order for the engine and the engine's PCM to reach its final state of tune. Got it? Questions?
Yes. Do you have any explanation why both vehicles would be down 3 miles a gallon?
Well, I do, and here's why. I made a trip to Tallahassee, Florida from Pensacola, which is kind of a boring 200-mile drive. But I had, 5 AV, so I've got satellite radio and phone radio and iPod songs and I've got the Eagles video, which is one of my favorite bands. Although I couldn't watch it because it's locked out, but I can listen to it. So if it weren't for the music and driving a really nice luxury car, what a boring drive. I got 26.7 miles per gallon, and I made 5 trips to Tallahassee and back when I testified before the House and the Senate with regard to fuels, ethanol fuels. And so to that end, these were committees, by the way, and to that end, that car to this day, which is 65,000 miles, will get 26.7 miles per gallon any time of the year with no rain. Now in rain it won't do that because there's friction on the road. You got to push that water out of the way. It will get 26.7 miles per gallon at 79 miles per hour average. And so I would, and my car is no different than your 18 Terrain. I would challenge the fact that you've got 3 miles per gallon difference. I would say to you, if you take the same 200-mile trip there and back, and you should get the same gas mileage there and back if there's no rain on. And rain, of course, the car has friction, has to push the water out of the way. So you're not going to get the same gas mileage in the rain. I know because I watch things like that. And let me tell you, John, just so you'll know, I'm anal about the MPG, and every time I fill my car, I guess the number of gallons it's going to take, and the most I've ever been off was the last fill up. I said it was going to hold 19.2 and hell 19.8, and that was way off for me. And I keep my receipts and what have you, and I do that. And I actually run my vehicle down to 0 miles to empty, unless I'm going to go on a trip somewhere or across the Bay Bridge, and I say, well, it's not time to play games here. But I'll run my vehicle to 0 miles to empty, because at 0 miles to empty, it should still have 1.4 gallons of gas in it. It holds 21.4. So if I run it to 0 miles to empty, I know it's going to hold 20 gallons, and it's always on 2 clicks. And nozzles are not always the same, so I may be more accurate than even I think. But I do that as a game. I do that also to ensure that my car there's nothing wrong or going wrong with my car, because the first thing, like you got 3 miles per gallon drop, and what have you. But I would challenge you to go 200 miles on a 400-mile round trip and use the same octane fuel. It doesn't matter what kind of fuel you buy. It really doesn't. The Shell's great. They put in more cleaner, but in the final analysis, 85% of the fuel on the Gulf Coast comes out of Mobile, Alabama anyway, and the different brands add their different additives so that they can claim that it's their fuel. And it is their fuel because they put their additives. But 85%, and I know I've been to the plant, and it was at one time owned by LL&E, Louisiana Land and Exploration, and that plant was sold years ago. But anyway, so that's what I would say to you.
Well, Bobby, first of all, I want to thank you for the information. And second of all, I want you to know you're not the only one anal about mileage and gasoline, because I do exactly the same thing since I was a teenager. And that's a long time ago.
Well, for me, and all my crew here, they keep saying, you're going to call me out of gas one day. You're going to call me out of gas one day. And this all started when the car was new and the gas gauge failed, and I happened to be on the middle of Bay Bridge with weather, with traffic really backed up, and there was an accident,
And so I really felt uncomfortable and the anxiety. And so I said, well, okay, I don't know what, and I had not been looking at the gauge because I look at the miles left to empty, right? So here's what I did. And then we're going to move on, folks, but here's what I did that's very interesting. I looked at the number of miles since I had filled, and lo and behold, it was one of the few, if only time, that I didn't reset the vehicle, and it had 500 and something miles. Well, it only goes at the best, 20 times 16, 17 miles a gallon in town. So I knew that I didn't reset it. Therefore, I couldn't use how many miles I had driven, and what I had done is I was in a hurry and I didn't fill the tank. That's what I had done, and I quit doing that. So now I don't care if the gauge goes out. I know how many miles I can get depending on the digital readout, and it is so darn accurate that it's scary, especially considering that your car, my car, and all cars count the number of pulses the injectors open and the pressure and the size of the orifice, and that's how they get MPG depending on miles driven. Anyway, got another call, John. Thank you so much for your call. Recheck your mileage again using, low octane fuel and go from there, okay?
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So much fun. Folks, that's all the time that we have for today. Remember, if you're like James with his Ford Focus that needed some services, be sure to use Motorcraft parts for all your repair and maintenance needs. And for close to 5 decades now, the Motorcraft name has stood for durability and quality, and Motorcraft parts offer OE-approved specifications and performance for all Ford and Lincoln repairs. Having said that, Omnicraft parts offer similar for different make and model of automobile. Regardless, get Motorcraft, the right part, price right. You can go to FordParts.com. I'll see you same time next week. Likis,
This
you'll
is
love
Bobby
us.
Likis Car Clinic. Bobby Likis Car Clinic is a copyrighted presentation of Car Clinic Productions Incorporated and may not be reproduced or rebroadcast without the express written approval of Car Clinic Productions Incorporated.
Save on your next oil change at O'Reilly Auto Parts when you purchase 5 quarts of Valvoline conventional motor oil and a MicroGuard filter for $24.99. Plus, get a $5 O'Reilly Auto Parts gift card after mail-in rebate. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limit supply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Repairing a coolant leak can be costly and typically happens to older vehicles that may not be worth the expensive fix. K-Seal is an alternative, a pour-in solution designed to stop leaks and help prevent future leaks. Older sealers use sodium silicate, which has the tendency to clog the system. K-Seal features ceramic technology that's designed to repair the leak without clogging. K-Seal is available nationwide at part stores like AutoZone. Learn more at kseal.com. That's kseal.com. Don't just seal it, K-Seal it.
You're listening to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
Rosie Outfitters, I'm Tina. How can I help you?
I'd like to place an order.
Great. Which item?
The cotton roll neck sweater, large.
Okay. Periwinkle, Loden, or caramel?
The caramel, please.
The what?
I'd like it in caramel.
Oh, the caramel?
Yeah, that's what I said, Tina.
Actually, you said caramel when it's pronounced caramel.
Can't we just call it yellow?
No.
Everyone knows the best part of a Milky Way. They just don't know how to say it. After all, it's our caramel.
It's caramel.
Ugh, that makes a Milky Way great.
You start my morning, you stir in my soul, you warm my heart, make me